Valley Industry and Commerce Association, and welcome to our video presentation of the Business Forecast Conference. We had an incredible day. Our panelists were fantastic. We had more than 30 panelists, more than 40 exhibitors. Our panels talked about entertainment, healthcare reform, government reform, energy, water and transportation, as well as our morning panel, which were 3 economists that talked about the state of the economy, followed up by our luncheon keynote speaker, Jane Werwand, the founder of Dermalogica, who gave a great and incredible speech about finding opportunity in these uncertain times. I think you're going to enjoy these videos. You can find them on iTunes. You can look them up on YouTube at the VICA channel, and we appreciate that you're taking the time out of your day to look at this, and I think you'll see that next year you definitely want to be at this conference. And if you're interested in joining VICA, look at www.vica.com.
System-wide crash in the Delta. I think most of you have seen that and aware of it. We have a crumbling infrastructure. We have a dying set of fish species in the Delta. It's just a completely unreliable system for us, an antiquated system for us to move water to 25 million Californians that rely on it, hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland, and businesses obviously throughout the state. So it needs to be fixed. There is a planning effort that's going on right now in Sacramento, and it's led by state and federal agencies, environmental organizations, water districts at the table that are putting towards a comprehensive conservation plan. The goal is to restore the environment in the Delta, restore the fish species, preserve, protect habitat, and at the same time provide a reliable water supply for the interests in the state that receive water from the Delta. That includes the Bay Area. There are large swatches of the Bay Area that receive water from the Delta. It includes Silicon Valley as well as Walnut Creek, East Bay area, stretching down through the Central Valley, and then the entire Southern California area. So it's a broad-based effort. It's going through the planning processes right now, and it will, like I said, set aside habitat, and at the same time they're exploring what are the new ways that we can deliver water reliably. And they're going through a number of options, and part of that would be building a new canal, a new conveyance facility, because moving it through the Delta right now just simply doesn't work. It's not reliable. If we have an earthquake, we've got saltwater intrusion with climate change, and we need to protect the fish species. We're looking at several ways to do that. There are several different alignments to build a new water delivery system.
What is the value of legislation, and what is the urgency behind the effort right now that would have folks working up until midnight, the last day of session, and then immediately turning around and calling on the governor to call a special session to get this done? And I'd like to try to shed a little bit of light on that. The best perspective that I can offer is, and this is in part informed by my previous job with Cayugas, several water agencies in this area are 100% dependent on the State Water Project. They get no other water resources, and so we've been watching what's been happening and the growing, mounting threats to the Delta water supplies for a while. But even during those decades of efforts and negotiations and discussions going on, there were a number of challenges that were revealed, some of them having to do with all of the 200 different agencies that are involved in Delta discussions that all have a role with no real head on the tiger. And there's been a problem even with the CalFed program that was established many years ago, and you may have heard about the Little Hoover Commission's analysis of that effort, and basically what they said is there was no accountability there. So what we need out of legislation is we need some accountability. We need to have a governance structure that ensures that those 200 different agencies and interests that have their own interests that, in fact, unfortunately, can conflict with each other, that there is an actual plan that we're moving forward to address these co-equal goals for the state that were established through the Delta Vision from the Governor's Blue Ribbon Task Force that he set forth a couple years ago. Those co-equal goals, I think you all know, are reliable water supply and a restored ecosystem. But we haven't been able to do that because we haven't had the governance structure in place to ensure that any effort is really an accountable effort. So what the legislation does in this comprehensive package, and I've got new numbers for you because new bills were introduced last night if you're interested in that, is it would set up three areas in the policy arena, and then some additional water management tools that we need. The first area is to set forth a governance structure called the Delta Stewardship Council, and this council would be responsible for developing a plan. That's the second area, a Delta plan. And the plan, what's critical about the plan is that it would incorporate and advance the interest of those communities and all of us that are stakeholders in the Delta, but it would do so, again, based on those two co-equal goals, and it would have as its cornerstone this Bay Delta Conservation Plan.
One of the biggest issues that we face, quite frankly, is the Department of Water and Power not having any credibility or accountability with the ratepayers. And so we've been studying all the different models and methods out there so we can have an independent inspector, an inspector general. We recently introduced a motion that I helped put together as well for asking for an independent inspector, an office that would have transparency and accountability, access to all records, and not be held responsible to answer to either the DWP Commission, the staff, the board, the mayor, the city council, or neighborhood councils, but they would answer to the ratepayers. They would be truly independent. The Department of Water and Power is the largest municipally owned utility in the United States, and we do not have a ratepayers advocate. There's 3 motions pending before the City Council right now, one by my boss, which asked for an inspector general. There's another one by Eric Garcetti, the president of the council, that asked for a ratepayers advocate. And then there's another motion from Councilman Huizar asking for an ombudsman or liaison to the ratepayers and to the council. I think what's going to happen with all 3 of those is they'll be melded into one and come up with something that has true independency, true transparency, and accountability to the ratepayers, which is something we haven't had. We need to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to capture not only the water and treat the water and make sure that we have a supply, because it's affecting us greatly. And what's going to happen in the future is if we start going to rationing instead of conservation, it's going to stop all development in the San Fernando Valley and the region and citywide, but it's going to have grave effects also on the business community, particularly light industrial manufacturing and M-zone properties that rely on water. So we've got to focus on investing the dollars.
One interesting fact, the city of LA right now, the residents and businesses in LA use the same total amount of water that we used in 1990. There are about 1.5 million more people here than there were in 1990, but through the conservation that Mitch and Mark have been talking about, you can't sell your home unless you got low flow shower heads and low flow toilets and drip irrigation, and the projects that DWP and Met have done. We have actually kept our usage constant for almost 18 years, which is pretty remarkable considering the growth in LA. The other part of that story is that because we are not using more water, we have avoided spending close to $400 million, all of our dollars, for additional water treatment facilities because we're not using more water. So there's a financial as well as environmental piece that all goes together with the conservation.
One of the things that Heal the Bay would like people to start thinking about is not necessarily these percentage reductions, but just how much water are we using per capita per day. And one of the goals, and it's very, very ambitious, and I'm not saying it should be enforceable, but just a goal for us to shoot at by 2020, very, very ambitious within the city of Los Angeles, that I'd like to see someone move forward and try to get this done, is 100 gallons per capita per day of potable water use. Why do I say potable water use? Because there's a lot of other water out there for us to use, and we should start thinking about it more and more in the equation. So that's recycled water. Recycled water in the San Fernando Valley has been somewhat controversial in the last 15, 20 years, to say the least. Yet it is something that's a viable resource. I think we've learned more and more about it. And the rate of water recycling in the city of Los Angeles is not what it should be. It's nowhere close to what it could be.